Frank said, you know, in Denmark he was a peasant. He'll never own land, and he'll never progress. But here he owns land, and he always just he couldn't say enough about America. He loved America and the gospel.
Yeah.
I know my mother also loved Grandpa, and the last few years when he was too sick, I think he never had a sick day until he was 94. And she said he got whooping cough, and then when he couldn't live alone, he lived with Mom and Dad. And he was so cute with the kids. And we've carried on that tradition in my family to do some of his little sayings with the babies, like Reether, Runkin, or Esteem, Panabine, Nasatip. Those were things that he said, and that, so we honor him to it. Jewel asked me to talk about what it was like to be in a large family. Can you imagine? My dad was, I think, 57 when I was born.
I lied, I'm
He
sorry.
turned 58 in December.
Okay.
But anyway, I love my dad. Very close to him. What a blessing for me to be born in a family of 15. My next sibling was 4 years older. Fran was 4 years older. Donald 5 years older. Roberta 6 years older, and Drew was actually 8 years older than me. So that, you know, those are kind of fractions. But anyway, when we had chores, they were divided equally. Even though I was 4 years younger than Fran, I was expected to do the same chores. It gave me a work ethic. I never, well, I'm sure I slacked, but it made me competitive, and I tried to keep up with these guys. And I didn't feel we were poor. We didn't have any money, but we were not poor. We were rich in the things that counted, in love and that. When everybody else went to school and I was still at home, I'd help Mother do the chores and the breakfast dishes. And then we would play cards. She taught me how to add and subtract. She would kind of miscalculate her score, had me check it out. So before I went to my 5 weeks of kindergarten in the summertime, I could add and subtract. Beverly had taught me how to read. What a blessing. Beverly was a saint, and 12 years older than me, and she was wonderful, as all my brothers and sisters were, and they had to put up with me, and I'm sure I was a child. We made our own fun. We had swings. One of my first memories is a big swing in the poplar tree that was kind of north and east of the house. And I was little, I remember what I was wearing. I was wearing the little green dress, smock. Beverly had embroidered little pink roses on the smocking. And it must have been a Sunday I had that on. Drew and Donald would catch that swing in a rope and sling me higher and higher. I could see over the house. All of a sudden I fell out. They said I knocked the wind out of me. Well, it knocked me out. I don't remember that tree being there much longer. It was taken down. We had a bombarding swing up until Frank's where we would climb a high orchard ladder. They'd sling the swing at us, and you'd jump out and grab it and swing. Wonder we didn't kill ourselves with that. We made our own entertainment. Of course, we played lots of night games, and all the kids from the neighborhood would come to our house. And we played game. Donald, do you remember King of the Hill?
Oh yeah.
Lost his teeth
That's
playing
how I
King of the
lost my
Hill.
teeth, yep.
Anyway, we played games, and the neighbor kids always came over. We had bonfires, and we baked potatoes. You just take a potato, put it in the coals. It would bake. You'd poke it with a stick, it would come out black. You'd take the black off and just keep it on that stick and eat it. Salt and pepper a little bit. Oh, it was a good treat. Dad had made a stove out of a big barrel, and we could cook fudge on it. One time we tried to make, do you remember trying to make split pea soup, Fran? I do.
But I remember Dad would put the chairs around the table and we went on the stove.
Around the stove, yeah, with the
Stove,
clothes
and
on.
then put
Yourself.
our coats or something
Yeah,
around.
well, it was cold in the house. We had a stove that we cooked on in the kitchen, a big Monarch, black with silver filigree on it, and that was a coal stove, and Mom cooked on that. It was great because everybody came to town to slide down Uncle Frank's Hill from Grandpa Rasmussen's house. When we would come in, I want to talk one more thing about sleigh riding. Dad had invented some clamps that went on the red wagon wheel, and they were sleigh runners.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, could we go down that hill? And I still like to sleigh ride. I did have a little child come up to me a few years ago and say, "Aren't you a little old to sleigh ride?" And of course we were up at Tibble Fork and I was loving it. And I said, "Well, you know, when you get this old, you might like to sleigh ride." I said, "How old do you think I am?" Got this look in his little face. He said, thought of the biggest numbers. He says, "I think you're 53. I said, "Oh, thanks, yeah." Maybe when you're that old, you'll want to sleigh ride too. But when we get through sleigh riding, we'd be so cold, we'd go in, put a Sears catalog on the oven door. You could either sit on that and warm up, or you could sit on a chair and put your feet in the oven and warm up. We also had a stove in the dining room. Now, one of my chores was to take the ashes out every day. Once a week, I had to take the clinkers out. And I had to split kindling. I had to carry coal in the coal buckets. And we had to keep that supplied. And so we had chores from when we were very little. And we had to do them. We never expected to get paid. It wasn't expected. It was never experienced. But we did go to the movies every Friday night. We'd light up in front of Dad in his overstuffed chair, and he'd say, "You kids are going to nickel and dime me to death." And, you know, he'd give us a nickel and a dime. That would get you into the movie, 15 cents. And if you had extra change, he'd give you a quarter. Oh my gosh. You could go into the movies, you could buy popcorn for a nickel and a candy bar for a nickel. They didn't serve drinks then. So anyway, if you got a quarter, you had to make it. I never got a ride to school in my life from Dad or Mother. We walked, and we walked home for lunch. School lunch was not in the budget. I only remember 2 times in all my school years that I ate school lunch. School lunch money was not in the budget. And so we came home for lunch. Mother usually served soup. They'd have the trading post of the air, and they'd play Stars and Stripes River. Fran and I called that the potato soup song. It was on during the lunch hour when we'd come home. And so we really didn't eat in the kitchen. We always ate around the dining room table. Mother, for breakfast, we'd have to eat our mush first. She would cook 3 kinds of mush. Now you call it hot cereal. I hated mush. I had to eat it. If you ate your mush, then you could have bacon, ham, eggs, and sometimes liver. And then she would cook eggs to order. I mean, I remember once or twice that she broke the boys' egg yolk and they bawled. I mean, they liked them over easy, you know. Anyway, you'd have homemade bread, toasted, you'd have homemade butter, homemade jam, or preserves. Preserves still had the pits in it. You had to eat it and then kind of spit the pits out. Anyway,
Always
lunch.
wax on top of the
Yeah,
sausage.
she did the preserves and did the hot wax to seal it. Anyway, everything was homemade. I remember Christmas time, you know, jolly old St. Nicholas, and talks about the stockings. Mine was all shortest one, you'll be sure to tell. And mine was always the shortest one. We hung our own stockings. And so mine was the shortest one. But Christmas time was a joy. That would be the one day of the year we'd get an orange. We had 1 orange a year, and it would be in the bottom of your stocking. And then there would be hardtack and peanuts. And so we'd hang our own stockings, and what a delight. But before we could go in the living room at Christmas time, we had to eat our mush. We could peek through the door, but we couldn't go in.
What did you put on your mush? Did you just
We put cream on it, most often skim milk, because Mother would skim the milk till it was blue, so she'd have butter. Dad'd say she'd skim and blow the milk, because she would skim it and then blow it. Anyway, one of my fondest memories was a summertime when we were out, and I don't know whether it was West Mountain or Cedar Mountain, and there was a spring up above the land. And Dad took us up there. We were out on the farm, and he took us up there by the spring to eat our lunch. So our lunch would typically be homemade bread, butter on it, cheese on that, and then another slice of bread wrapped in wax paper. And then we'd have a gallon bottle, it'd be a glass bottle, wrapped in a gunny sack and wet so it'd be cool. Anyway, we went up by the spring, eat our lunch, and he said, "Let's pick a Christmas tree." And so there were cedar trees there. He tore up his red handkerchief and he tied it to the top. And he said, now do you kids want a tree to take to your classroom? And so that year he did tie a little red thing. And later on, near Christmas, we went out and my leg was twice the size. My seminary teacher felt so bad for me. He gave him like my first Elvis record, Heartbreak Hotel. And on the other side of 45 here in the jailhouse in our room. I still have that record. Anyway, isn't that funny? But I have a memory, too many things.
You got a nice scarf from that?
I do have a nice scarf on it and have trouble with that later. One night I was so sick and in such pain, and I said, Mother, I need Dad to give me a blessing. And she said, Marsha, he's too sick. He cannot give you a blessing. I said, Mom, you don't understand. I really need a blessing. And again, Marsha, he's too sick. And I said, Mom, I just cried and begged her. And as I went into his bedroom, and we were quite a sight. He in his long underwear, Mom was holding him up. And he gave me a blessing. His hands were shaking so hard. And he blessed me that I'd be okay. And things would go well. And I remember she had to hold him up. And he shook so bad. And 2 days later, Mother ran into Mrs. Dastrup, who was Dr. Evans' sister, in the grocery store. And Mrs. Dastrup said, how's Marsha doing after Doc Evans amputated her leg? He talked to his sister about it. I know that Dad's blessing on the Heavenly Father healed me, and I still have my leg. Even though he was physically weak, his priesthood was strong. And I am so thankful for that in my life. Dad and I were very, very close. Mother and I were very, very close. Uncle Frank and I were very, very close. I love this family. I love each one of you. I love my brothers and sisters. I appreciate the heritage that I had and appreciate the heritage that I continue to have, and with the young kids and that, as I learn from them, and it goes full circle. So before I learned from my parents, my brothers and sisters, and now the nieces and nephews, and the grandnieces and nephews and the grandkids. So I appreciate you every time. For instance, little Rachel here, what a good friend she is, and Kendra, what a good friend. And I could talk about each one of the kids here. And I love you. Thank you. And I'm sorry it took so long, but I had to share that last story about that.
Thanks.